Today we are going through what's gonna go down at the beginning of the season, very simply. The pre-season week 1 when Mythic Plus and the raid, normal, heroic and mythic as well, will all be closed, and then you have week 2, the opening of the season, the opening of Mythic Plus, the opening of the raid, and then week 3, which is going to be the normal weekly reset that will then continue down the following weeks. So the type of items and loot, item level you can go for in week 1, what's going to happen in week 2 and 3, the type of upgrades you can go for, the crafted items, and the things that are changing from season 2 to season 3. So the first thing that changes, first of all, is that due to the increased item level from +10s being available in Mythic Plus, which will be Hero, Track, 3 out of 6 from Mythic Plus 10, as well as, of course, with the fact that we are back to having 6 out of 6 upgrades now. We're not on the Turbo Boost, on the Turbo Boost event level where we are getting 8 out of 8 upgrades for Hero and Mid Track. We're back to 6 out of 6. What happens is that the runed crests will become outdated for everyone who is going to be spamming Mythic Plus by the 3rd week of the season. So week 1, week 2, week 3. By this week, you basically will no longer need runed crests. That's because, as you can see from our new loot table, season 3 loot table graph, if you do Mythic Plus 10, you are looting 701 Hero Track 3 out of 6 gear. 701 is only 1 upgrade away from you no longer needing runed crests. So considering then in the first 3 resets you should have 2 different crafted items plus the belt you're not replacing plus the new artifact cloak, this only leaves you with 12 remaining slots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. And these are your crafted items. So if you have 12 pieces left and you only need 1 upgrade level to go and max your runed crests, 12 times 15 runed crests is 180. How many crests do we get as a cap here? 90 runed crests. How many crests do we get here? 90. And 90 plus 90 is 180. So in the first 2 resets of the season and 3 resets of the patch, you will basically no longer need runed crests. If you have spammed Mythic Plus as well as did some heroic raid to get yourself 701 item level gear. Now, as for crafting, some classes may not want to craft a weapon first for a couple of reasons. Reason number 1, we have the new best in slot set for healers and casters, which is the sword or dagger or staff tied together with the new trinket, the Diamantine Void Core, which gives you the set bonus. The effect is the proc, the main stat proc for the trinket, and a damage or absorb shield proc for the weapon. But if the trinket has procced, then the proc of the weapon will be 200% more powerful. At the moment, this is the best combo you can use for pretty much any caster. So obviously you're not very incentivized to craft yourself a weapon if you're gunning for this. The second one, which will also be very relevant for Mythic Raiders, is the fact that the first 3 bosses are chock full of weapons. You can see here that the first boss has a polearm weapon, he has a strength and intellect mace. The second boss is going to have a dagger, a bow and a shield, and the third boss is going to have a staff and a fist weapon. So this one being also pretty easy to kill. In Mythic, you will have quite a few Mythic weapons for you to get in the first 3 bosses. So between the easy weapons from the bosses plus the possible best in slot weapons from the set, you might not want to craft a weapon. Possibly if you're still looking for your Ascendance embellishment, then if anything you will go for an off-end slot to craft. Talking about crafted items, also very likely your second piece, if you're still going for the Nerubian embellishment to buff this embellishment, it will be the bracers. Because the weakest armor pieces in your gear are boots, belt, cloak and bracers. But the belt is occupied, the cloak is occupied, the boots will also be occupied because the 5th boss, the Soul Hunters, do drop special boots that buff the proc rate of your artifact cloak effect by 50%. So these are also best in slot for basically everyone. So occupied, occupied, occupy the only slot left basically is going to be your bracers for your embellishment. However, in week 1, when we have no Mythic Plus, no raid available, what you can do is you can deal with the world boss, of course. You have the world boss giving you a 688 3 out of 8 champion track gear that you can go for, and you can go also for Mythic 0 dungeons. It will only be 6 out of 8 because these two are missing, because they won't be available as a Mythic 0 dungeon. They will be available as a mega dungeon altogether in hard mode, always active hard mode that will open once Mythic Plus opens. So you only have 6 Mythic 0 dungeons in week 1, and if you want the max vault, the 3 options from the vault, you will have to re-clear 2 Mythic 0 dungeons you have already done, so you won't get any loot there, but you need them for the vault. 8 out of 8 options. Now, Mythic 0 can still drop 681 champion track 1 out of 8. You can see it over here, Myth 0 681, which can be upgraded all the way up to 704. Obviously, spending ruined crests to upgrade champion track gear is pretty bad, but you can still spend carved crests to go all the way up to 691, which is, better than what you have now. Obviously, the likelihood that you will find something good is very unlikely, because coming from this season, you will have your best in slot trinkets, your best in slot rings, you will have tier sets, of course, so finding some generic random loot drop from Mythic 0 that will beat some of the best in slot pieces you have will be pretty hard, even if you can upgrade it to 691. But maybe you go do Mythic 0 Arakara, and what do you know, you get yourself a sack brood, right? Maybe it can happen, and you can feasibly upgrade this to at least 691 item level, right? The other thing you should be doing, of course, is delves. Something you probably have done already in season 2. Delves are reset to tier 3. So you bring them up again to tier 8, and then you do 8 delves at tier 8. Why? Because in week 1 this will be your best chance at a good vault reward. You can see here in the vault rewards that the Myth 0 gives you 691 champion track gear, whereas delves at tier 8 gives you 694 hero track gear. So it's the best reward you can find in the Great Vault on week 1. It's of course even better for all of those specs that still have things like delve trinkets as their theoretical best in slot. After doing 8 delves though, you can actually continue to do, I think, 4 or 5 more to have enough undercoins, which will reset at the beginning of the season, have enough undercoins to buy yourself a Shrieking Quartz. This is an item to forcefully spawn the Nemesis in your delve. And in case you're not aware, if you spawn the Nemesis, that is what guarantees you looting a Delver's Bounty from the Nemesis, which gives you the hero track gear from the vault reward, just like it did in season 2, except it will be locked in the first week of the season. That's as far as you can go in week 1. You can do the world boss, the 6 Mythic 0 dungeons, and the 8 delves. Then there is the bit about the degeneracy concerning augment runes. So skip this if you don't care at all about augment runes. Right now you can get the raid renown to renown 8 to get yourself 3 ruined crests that persist through death and last 1 hour every time you defeat the soul hunters. So once you get to week 8 of 2 months of the season, you get to renown 8, and every time you defeat them you get 3 augment runes that will last 3 hours. However, if you are in a progression guild and you raid like 3 nights a week, 3 hours of augment runes is just poor, right? So instead you will be able to go with the Kareshi Trust, which is the, I guess, the renowned faction for the general zone rather than the raid. And once you get to renown 18 over here, you get yourself the ethereal augment rune. And this is the classic end of the expansion repeatable reusable item for your endless augment runes. Now I believe that if you do the full degeneracy, even excluding any possible cheese or repeatable form of rep gain, you might get to renown 18 by week 6 of the patch. This of course requires all sorts of degeneracy, so it includes things like waiting, first of all, for the Dark Moon Fair to do anything. So doing all of the stories, all of the chapters of the stories, all of the side quests, doing all of the world quests, all of this you wait until you have the rep buff of the Dark Moon Fair. You also wait until someone else gets to Renown 5 with the Kareshi Trust. Why? Because this is the contracts. So you wait for what's that, an inscriptioner, to be able to put the contract of the Kareshi Trust up in the auction house. You buy that to get yourself 10% more rep. You get the Dark Moon Fair event to get yourself 10% more rep, and then you do everything. You do all of the world quests in every zone to get yourself the rep, and then you go into Karesh to do all of the world quests and all of the daily rares. All of the rares that give you rep daily. And you can do this basically every day for 6 weeks, and you should be able to get to Renown 18. That's the other bit of degeneracy you can start doing since week 1, if you care that much about augment runes. Now, week 2, and also known as week 1 of the beginning of the actual season, is when most of your time presumably will get filled by doing Mythic Plus, because that's when you can start looting 701 hero track 3 out of 6 gear from Mythic Plus, which is going to be of course by far the best way for you to get gear. We already mentioned the, ideal situation is that you get yourself a full set of gear at 701 item level, and then you spend all of your 180 runed crests you have gotten to upgrade them all from 701 to 704. But obviously this is not, gonna happen, because for example you can't replace your tier pieces with some generic 704 item level piece. For many other players, they won't replace their House of Cards or their mid-track pick-me-up with some generic 704 trinket. That's terrible, right? But for many other pieces of your gear, you might be able to replace them early on with Mythic Plus gear. You can still do many of the things you have done in week 1, like the whole grinding for augment runes. You can still go for the world boss. You can still go for the delves, especially now that you can spend your restored coffer keys that you didn't use in week 1. Now back to mentioning the mega dungeon of Tazavesh, which will also open this week. Now, technically speaking, Blizzard's plan is to have the Tazavesh mythic hard mode mega dungeon to reward you with 701 item level gear, so just like a Mythic Plus. If this will still go live, it will be a very good source of loot, of course, because an entire dungeon, right? An entire dungeon at the end of it will give you, 3 pieces maybe of 701 item level loot. Whereas if you do the mega dungeon, it will be basically 2 or 1 piece per boss, which is going to be more than what you can find in a single Mythic Plus key. Of course, that's also because it's once per week, being still coded as a Mythic 0 dungeon, so you can't repeat this mega dungeon hard mode over and over, but at least once you can do it for pretty quick Euro track level gear, provided of course you can kind of do it quickly and not chain wipe because it's still too hard. Now, the beginning of the season on the beginning of week 2 is presumably when you can also get your first full spark, so your first full crafted item. So you have at the beginning of week 2 90 gilded crests, but of course only 30 to spend, because 60 you will use them for your first craft. The first craft will get your 720 item level piece. We have already mentioned what you should craft first. Likely, presumably, will be the offhand for many players to keep a slot open for your weapon, and that will be most of the things you're keeping track of at the beginning of the season. Doing the delves with the restored coffer keys and the Delver's Bounty map for a hero track piece of gear, doing Mythic Plus for as many 701 item level pieces that you can find, together of course if you're raiding Heroic to also get some hero track pieces from the raid. The possible, as mentioned, continued degeneracy of doing all of the world quests, the weeklies, choosing the reputation rewards for the Kareshi Trust to try to get to Renown 18 for your infinite augment rune, as well as choosing the slot of your piece of gear for your first crafted item. So by the end of it, you should be able to have found basically all of your gear at 701 item level, or at the very least 6 of them, so you can upgrade them by 1 tier from 701 to 704 with 15 ruined crests. Since the cap on week 2 will be 90, that's the first week you can find ruined crests, you will only be able to upgrade 6 pieces from 701 to 704, 1 piece at 720, which will be presumably your offhand, and then a second piece if you have been lucky, for example in mythic raiding, to get 1 mid-track gear. You will also be able to upgrade that with the 30 remaining gilded crests you have. Otherwise you can simply save them, for example wait for the Great Vault next reset. This should put your item level at around 704 item level at the end of the first week of the season and the second week total. So at the end of this week you should be around 704 item level with no more crests to spend. You can of course freely spend the weathered and carved crests because there isn't really much for you to use them in week 1. If you find some piece of gear here or here and you want to upgrade them all with carved crests to 691, you can go ahead. It's not going to be relevant that much. And then week 3 starting here is what will basically be repeating for the rest of the season. You will be able to open your vault with, of course, mid-track gear, because you did mythic plus 10, so obviously you have the max possible reward from the Great Vault, which will be 707 mid-track 1 out of 6. Possibly you have killed, of course, also bosses in mythic, so you also have mid-track rewards there for you to choose. You can still do the same things you have been doing in the first couple of weeks, like doing the world boss, like still doing the whole things about your world quests and your rep stuff for the Kareshi Trust to try to go for the augment runes. You can still do the delves with your coffer keys and the delver's bounty if you find it, to try to get some hero track trinket you might really want as a spec. Continue to do your weekly 10s to cap your crests again, and also to try to find some more hero track gear you might have missed out on, especially some target items, like you are some agility user and you really want to find the the Lily of the Eternal Weave, your 90-second cooldown on use mastery trinket, for example, so you want to spam Echo Domaldani for this trinket, for example. Now this is also presumably where you get your second spark, because I believe supposedly you should get a full crafted spark on week 1 and then half and then half. So you hold, of course, on the first full one, because you're not going to craft anything here because you have no gilded crests. You craft it here, you have the first half of the spark gotten from here, and then at the beginning of the 3rd week you have the second half of the spark, which you can then combine and use for your second craft. Now this is where you have the split. Do we spend 60 more gilded crests to also craft something else, or do we save the 60 gilded crests for actually upgrading something useful, like for example what we looted from the Great Vault, and instead we will use the classic raid quest to defeat the last boss to get yourself a free ruined crest, enchanted ruined crest. This will very likely often be the best solution for raiders, because as we have mentioned, if you craft your first embellishment here, the second one will be in the bracers, which is your weakest slot in the gear. So not having this at mid-track level but only at hero track level from a crafted item is not that punishing, because number 1, you can make up for the lack of item level by being able to still give it an embellishment, so giving you a pretty good boost in damage or healing, and also because you are saving 60 gilded crests. So it's not that this craft is only lowering your item level, because this could have been a mid-track item instead of a hero track item. The mid-track item you're not getting here, you are getting in the form of 60 gilded crests you are saving and that you can spend on other pieces of gear for upgrades. Now, if you're not progressing that fast in the raid, for example, if you're not expecting by the beginning or by throughout the second week of the raid to be at the very least around here, right, 5th to 6th boss of the raid in progress, then you can wait We don't need really to craft the second embellishment already by downgrading your craft to a hero 1 only if you're not going that hard in raiding. But for most raiders that are pushing that level, you will want to get a hero track, a runed crest crafted item rather than a gilded one, to save yourself gilded crests for more power early on. Now on this week 3, talking about the gear, this is the week where your runed crest will now go completely out of date. In week 1, we upgraded 6 pieces of gear from 701 to 704 with 90 runed crests. In this week, you have 90 more runed crests, so you can upgrade 6 more 701 item level pieces to 704 with 90 more runed crests. Now, possibly this might never happen, very simply because in these 2 weeks you won't get enough gear to upgrade. For example, you might not get all 4 of the tier pieces, or you might very simply be missing out on a necklace or on a trinket for you to upgrade, right? But ideally, that's what you can do. You have 2 crafted items, you have 2 unmovable items, belt and cloak, which leaves you with 12 possible items to upgrade. 15 rune crests for 1 upgrade per item. 15 times 12 is 180, which is your max rune crests for these 2 weeks. On top of this, the first item in week 2 that you upgraded with those 30 gilded crests we mentioned, let's say you killed boss number 1 and you got, let's say you were lucky and you got a one-handed weapon, you brought this from 2 out of 6 to 4 out of 6 with 30 gilded crests. In this week you can bring this from 4 out of 6 to 6 out of 6 with the 30 more gilded crests. And then you can get your second mid-track item. This one though, you will have it, everyone will have it because of your vault, of your great vault, and you will be able to push it up to 5 out of 6 because the vault will be only at 1 out of 6 instead of 2 out of 6. So you can spend 60 gilded crests for upgrades to go from 1 out of 6 mid-track to 5 out of 6 mid-track. So you could have all of the rest of your gear at 704, 1 mid-track piece at 6 out of 6, 1 mid-track piece at 720, 5 out of 6, 1 720 crafted slot, and then you have the, weaker runed crest lower level crafted slot. This would be a 704, and then your cloak, which by week 3 should be a 707 item level. It upgrades in item level every week with the weekly quest. So this should put you at in or around 707 item level, more or less, 708 item level, more or less on average. And from this point onwards, everything will just repeat, right? You have outlasted runed crest. Now you are at that point where you have to having to, carefully think about which items to upgrade with your gilded crests, trying to have some luck in Mythic, actually being given some items and or getting some good items from the Great Vault. That's what will basically repeat week after week after these first very busy 3 resets of the season. The other one thing that will continue, as we mentioned, is your continued, contract world quest clearing and weekly quest for the rep for your Kareshi Trust faction to try to get to Renown, as we said, Renown 18 for the permanent Augment Rune reward. The rest of the stuff will instead become outdated. So delves, there is really no need to continue doing them. The world boss, no need to continue doing it. Of course, Mythic 0, also no need to continue doing it, unless, I guess, still the Mega Dungeon might still be useful, especially because I'm not up to speed with all of the specs, but there might be some unique things in here, like namely, for example, Solia's Trinket, which used to be a very meta, very powerful trinket used by many specs, or maybe something still unique like the Ring of the Panoply, which is the High Haste Ring, which might be a good alternative before you can start crafting your crafted rings later on, right? So it might still be useful to do Mythic 0 just for Tazavesh, not for the other ones. Since, as you can see here, this Mythic level is 694, but if you go to a different Mythic 0 dungeon, like, say, Floodgate, is just Champion track. So only Tales of Ash is still worth continuing to do at Mythic 0 level after Mythic Plus has opened. So this is what you can expect basically in the first 3 resets of the season. The first pre-season release without Raid and Mythic Plus, and then the first 2 full releases of the season with the Mythic Plus and the Raid available. In terms of what to look forward to, your, possible average item level after the first 3 resets, as we mentioned, close to 707-ish item level, the kinds of crafted gear you want to go for, the slots you might want to leave open because of some OP sets or possible very good items you will get from the raid especially, or just the ones to avoid because, well, their slots are clogged by things you will keep for a long time. And a few things you might have forgotten because it's been a few months since the beginning of Season 2, things like, for example, going back to doing delves because they are still useful at the beginning of the season. So, for today, on this Monday and the beginning of this week, we can now leave each other after this recap of what's gonna be going down at the beginning of Season 3. So, we're starting our goodbyes as usual by thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with, of course, everyone else who's been supporting completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, yeah, you know what? You know what's bad about the clouds, the damp atmosphere, and the rain in the summer? Is that flies are gonna start trying to get in. That's a problem.